Welcome to my tutelage. My name is Madeline and I am a tutor. Today we're talking about Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, A Psalm of Life. This poem is a call to action. Don't sleep your way through life, but act in the living present to try to make your life sublime. Longfellow begins by rebuking, "Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul." Yes, we die, but the grave is not our goal. Our soul survives, even though our bodies decay to dust. You notice right off the bat that the poem's cadence is very hymn-like. It's trochaic tetrameter, and it matches up with the melodies of a lot of 18th and 19th century hymns. You could try it with "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing" or "Let Us Love and Sing and Wonder." I'm not going to sing for you right now, but it is actually kind of fun to find out how many hymns and old songs you could fit this meter into. Whether this was unconscious or intentional, it makes sense that Longfellow would have been very immersed in hymns because he attended church his whole life. Longfellow was a Unitarian. In 19th century New England, Unitarians defected from the old Calvinism of New England and simultaneously rejected divine interpretation of Scripture, the Atonement, and the Trinity, which is why they're Unitarians rather than Trinitarians. They valued Jesus' human example but didn't believe that he was God. And so Longfellow was not an Orthodox Christian by a lot of other creeds, but he did believe in heaven, and he believed that life had purpose. And so that's why I bring all of this up, because I think that that is really important to know for this poem. Also, Longfellow references several parts of the Bible which he would have expected his readers to be familiar with, like that last line, "Dust thou art, to dust returnest." And the poem is captioned, "What the heart of the young man said to the psalmist." So the Psalms, some of them can be very mournful and very focused on being redeemed from sorrows. But it seems to me that actually this poem is more of a response to the book of Ecclesiastes rather than the book of Psalms, because Ecclesiastes is the one that keeps saying, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, there is nothing new under the sun." And I think that he could have meant either, because 5 of the Psalms were written by Solomon, who wrote Ecclesiastes. So that's just me nerding out a little bit about what he meant there. So let's continue with the poem. "Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow find us further than today." Joy and sorrow are neither the path nor the goal of life. They are byproducts of living. He encourages us to be purposeful, to be active, constantly moving forward. There can't be any days that we just throw away as unimportant. That's how we end up slumbering our way through life. And this is the New England Protestant work ethic trickling down through the generations. We do not have the right to waste time. So he goes on, "Art is long, and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave." And that's such a great image. Though life's goal is not the grave, our hearts are still drum beats marching toward the grave. Art is long. It outlasts other things, but it also takes a long time to create. Artists never feel like they have enough time to finish all of their projects, and that feeling intensifies as you realize that it's not just your hours, but your years that are limited. Time is fleeting. So Longfellow continues, "In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, Be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. And this battle will kill us, but we can be heroes, not cattle. I love that image of the bivouac of life. A bivouac is a temporary camp without tents or cover, usually used by soldiers. So you picture life as this sort of hastily made camp where you don't even have time to really pitch a tent because you need to move on to the next march. And even if you survive the day, eventually the battle will kill you. But in spite of all of that, you can be a hero. And so he continues again, trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within, and God o'erhead. This line is so apt for this moment that we're in. Really, none of us can trust the future, whether it scares us or pleases us, because we have no idea what's coming. But for Longfellow, this line also hints at the grief that he was experiencing around the time that he wrote this. This was published 4 years after the death of his first wife, Mary Storer Potter. She died after a miscarriage. So before her death, he would have seen his future as settled. He was newly married. He had just been hired by Bowdoin College. He and his wife was expecting their first child. But then his wife died. He never met his child, and he had to go work at the college alone. And so that pleasant future that he saw so clearly before him wasn't actually his. And now he has to let the dead past bury its dead. So his advice to us then is to act in the living moment. Don't wait for the future you think you'll have. You might have more time to do what you need to do 2 years from now, or you may be dead 2 years from now. I'm sorry, but there it is. And Longfellow was a college professor, first at Bowdoin and then at Harvard, for most of his writing career. So he also later on did remarry, and he had a family, so he always had all these different draws on his time, but we remember his poetry. So if there's something you believe you should be doing, whether in art or related to family or whatever it is, don't put it off forever. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, may take heart again. So great men do not just passively go through life. Achieving something worthwhile is hard work. And here I want to say, sublime is not famous. Achievement is not notoriety. So this isn't about vainglory. At least, my interpretation isn't about vainglory. In another of his poems, The Village Blacksmith, Longfellow praises a small-town man who, although unknown by the broader world, teaches us how to earn a night's repose by every day attempting and every day completing a task, toiling, rejoicing, sorrowing, he says. So he values people who might not achieve this greatness, but are still living their life in a way that is not slumbering. But at the same time, greatness does imply a fame of a sort, and it's the kind that follows meaningful work. So the goal is that your life would encourage another and leave footprints on the sands of time after you're dead. Time itself is shifting and yielding like sand. The footprints in the sand could be blown away, but those footprints might remain to encourage someone in the future. And Longfellow finishes the poem, "Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait." I love this last line. Achieving and pursuing doesn't have to be manic or fearful, because again, we're not living in the future, we're not living in the past. We have a heart for any fate. We're brave, we're prepared for joys and sorrows alike, and we're ready to stand the test. we're trusting and we're waiting, even as we labor. So this poem is not an overly positive mantra to make life work for you. Longfellow knew the sorrows that life could bring unbidden. I already told you about the death of his first wife. 2 decades later, he would lose his second wife, Frances Appleton, after her dress caught on fire. And Longfellow actually witnessed her death and tried to save her and was unable to. So he suffered from deep grief and depression. He spent the years following her death translating the Divine Comedy and writing famous poems like I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, which is now a hymn. And so his life was not a life of non-stop triumph and success, but I believe that this poem is one that you could stand by whether you are at a peak or a trough, whether you're in a good time or a dark time. At a time when many people are more fearful and more concerned for the future than we used to have to be, I think that this poem can be an encouragement for us to see the purpose and to still find that you can be achieving and pursuing even in a time of waiting. That's all for today. Please let me know what you think of Longfellow's A Psalm of Life. Let me know in the comments, and let me know also if there is a poem, story, song that you would like me to chat about in the future. This poem was a request, and it was also new to me, so I really liked taking the time to learn it and memorize it and study it. So thank you very much. Until next time, my name is Madeline, and this has been my tutelage.